Hello, everyone. I'm the Scarred Storyteller, and I'm here to help you unwind today. If you're using this video to fall asleep, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel before you drift off. By the way, where are you watching from? And what time is it for you? Now, get cozy, relax, and let's begin. The first thing you notice is the silence. Not the kind of silence that soothes, but the kind that presses against your eardrums, heavy and unnatural, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The woods surrounding the town of Black Hollow have always been a place of whispered warnings, where children dare each other to step beyond the tree line and adults speak in hushed tones about the things they've seen, or think they've seen. But for Clara, the silence is new. It's wrong. She hadn't meant to come here. Not really. The detour was supposed to be a shortcut, a way to avoid the traffic jam on the highway. But the GPS had led her down a narrow, winding road that seemed to stretch on forever, the trees closing in like skeletal fingers. And then, the car had sputtered and died, leaving her stranded in the heart of the hollow. The town is a relic, frozen in time. The buildings are weathered and leaning, their windows dark and lifeless. The air smells of damp earth and decay, and the only sound is the occasional creak of a rusted sign swinging in the breeze. Clara steps out of the car, her breath visible in the cold air, and feels the weight of the hollow's gaze. It's as if the town itself is watching her, waiting. She finds the first body in the old church. It's not a body, not really. It's a mannequin, or at least it looks like one. Its face is smooth and featureless, its limbs stiff and unnatural. But there's something about it that makes Clara's skin crawl. The way it's positioned, kneeling at the altar, its head bowed as if in prayer. The way its hands are clasped together, fingers intertwined in a way that seems almost human. And then there are the whispers. At first, she thinks it's the wind, but the sound is too deliberate, too rhythmic. It's coming from the mannequin, or maybe from the walls themselves. She can't make out the words, but the tone is unmistakable, pleading, desperate. She backs away, her heart pounding, and nearly trips over the second mannequin. This one is lying on the floor, its arms outstretched as if reaching for something. Its face is turned toward her, and for a moment, she swears its blank eyes are following her. She stumbles out of the church, the whispers growing louder, more insistent. They're in her head now, a cacophony of voices that she can't shut to. The streets are empty, but she can feel them watching her, the mannequins. They're everywhere, lurking in the shadows, their featureless faces turned toward her. Some are posed in grotesque tableaus, their limbs twisted and broken. Others are eerily lifelike, their bodies frozen in mid-motion. She tries to run, but the town seems to shift around her, the streets twisting and turning in on themselves. She's trapped, caught in a labyrinth of her own fear. And then she sees the house. It's different from the others, older and more decayed. The windows are shattered, the door hanging open on rusted hinges. But it's not the house itself that draws her in, it's the light. A faint, flickering glow spills from the doorway, casting long shadows across the porch. Against her better judgment, she steps inside. The interior is a nightmare. The walls are covered in strange symbols, etched deep into the wood. The floor is littered with broken furniture and shattered glass, and the air is thick with the smell of rot. But it's the mannequins that make her blood run cold. They're everywhere, their blank faces turned toward her, their bodies posed in grotesque, almost human positions. And in the center of the room, on a makeshift altar, is the source of the light. It's a mirror, but unlike any she's ever seen. The glass is dark and oily, reflecting the room in distorted, nightmarish shapes. And as she approaches, she sees something moving within it, a shadow, writhing and twisting, trying to break free. The whispers grow louder, more frantic, and she realizes with a sinking dread that they're coming from the mirror. She reaches out, her hand trembling, and touches the glass. The world explodes in a cacophony of sound and light. The mannequins come to life, their stiff limbs jerking and twitching as they converge on her. The whispers are deafening now, a chorus of voices screaming in her mind. She tries to run, but the floor gives way beneath her, and she falls into darkness. When she wakes, she's back in the car. The engine is running, the GPS chirping cheerfully as it directs her back to the highway. For a moment, she thinks it was all a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But then she sees it, the symbol, etched into the dashboard, the same symbol she saw on the walls of the house. And in the rearview mirror, she sees them, the mannequins, standing at the edge of the woods, their blank faces turned toward her. The whispers start again, faint but unmistakable. And this time, she knows they'll never stop. Story 2. It started with a whisper, faint and wavering, carried on the sigh of an evening breeze. At first, Jack thought it was merely the wind threading through the skeletal branches of the bristling pine trees that crowded the old, forgotten path. But as he stood frozen in the twilight, the whisper formed words, not from nature's symphony but from a darker place. "Turn back," it warned, a shiver trailing down his spine like frostbite. Jack adjusted his scarf tighter against the chill, determined to dismiss the unease blooming in his chest. He wouldn't turn back. Not when he was so close. The letter had been clear, a tattered envelope slipped under the door of his apartment, written in sharp, angular strokes that seemed to bite into the paper. 7 miles hollow. Midnight. The truth waits at the edge of the woods. And now, here he was, 7 miles deep into nowhere, crunching dead leaves underfoot as shadows lengthened and the path faded into overgrown oblivion. Somewhere ahead loomed the remains of the old Carter estate, abandoned decades ago after the fire and its whispered tragedies. No one had dared to return since. Jack flicked his flashlight on, the beam trembling slightly as it illuminated the curling mist clinging to the forest floor. The air here felt heavy, oppressive, filled with an unspoken weight that pressed against his lungs. The trees seemed to close in tighter, their gnarled branches twisting like skeletal fingers in his peripheral vision. It felt as though they were watching, judging, waiting. He shook off the thought. His journalistic instincts kicked in, reminding him why he was here in the first place. This was the story, his big break. Everyone loved a good urban legend, and the Carter estate was dripping with them. Apparitions spotted in broken windows. Screams echoing from deep inside crumbling walls. Unexplained disappearances. And the one that stood out most of all, the rumor of a hidden room, untouched by the fire, filled with secrets no one was meant to uncover. Jack pushed forward, the whispers growing faint behind him, sinking into the size of the forest as the tangle of trees opened to reveal the hulking silhouette of the estate. Moonlight spilled over its decaying facade, highlighting scorched beams and shattered windows. Despite its ruin, the house maintained a looming presence, its very essence staring him to approach. He swallowed hard and stepped closer. Something shifted inside the house, a shadow gliding past the doorway, impossibly fast, too fluid to be human. The flashlight's beam wavered as his grip tightened. A rational voice in Jack's head tried to explain it away, an animal, surely, but the sharp, metallic tang that suddenly hung in the air hinted at something far worse. He climbed the cracked stone steps, each creak and groan of wood beneath his boots mirrored by the desperate protests of his inner voice demanding he leave. Yet, Jack couldn't shake the pull, the relentless gravity dragging him forward. He had come for the truth, and something in that house wanted him to find it. The door stood ajar, blackness yawning beyond it like the open mouth of a predator. With a deep breath, Jack crossed the threshold, unaware that the whispers outside had fallen silent. It wasn't wind. It had never been wind. Something watched from the treetops, its hunger awakening. Inside the house, the temperature dropped sharply. The air felt damp now, the kind that seeped into bones and left skin numb. The once grand foyer stretched out before him, its marble floor cracked, its sweeping staircase sagging under layers of decay. Mold crawled up the peeling wallpaper like veins climbing toward an unseen pulse. And then he heard it, a soft hum, low and eerie, snaking out of the darkness, coming from deeper within the house. It filled the space, vibrating against his eardrums, the same unsettling resonance as a swarm of bees. Jack tried to ignore the creeping suspicion that the hum was not coming from one source, but from many. Gripping his flashlight tightly, he followed the sound, weaving through debris and sagging beams. He passed a mirror-hung askew, its surface warped and blotchy from time. Yet as he moved past, his reflection lingered in it a second too long, watching him with eyes that weren't quite his own. Jack stumbled back, throat tightening as he clenched his jaw. No. He wouldn't lose his nerve now. Resolute, he pressed forward, trailing the hum until it led him to a narrow doorway tucked just behind the staircase, a door that didn't belong in the blueprints he had studied. The handle was cold under his palm, unnaturally so, and as he turned it, a sliver of crimson light spilled from the crack, pooling on the floor. Inside was the room. It was untouched by time, pristine against the rot devouring the rest of the house. Ornate furniture gleamed under flickering candlelight, and the air thrummed with energy, humming so deeply now that it resonated in his chest. On a table in the center of the room sat an object, a small, black box. Its surface seemed to shift, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly, alive in their own right. Jack stepped forward, the world tightening around him with every inch closer. Somewhere far off, a voice screamed, his own muted instincts begging him to stop. But the box called to him, its darkness promising answers. His trembling hand extended toward it. The moment his fingers brushed the surface, the hum exploded into a deafening roar, the room shaking violently. Shadows twisted and erupted from the walls, spectral forms clawing their way toward him. The door slammed shut behind him, locking tight with a sound that carried finality. And then, the box opened,